Okay, so here we are after class. It's March 7th, talking about the D06 class, and I wanted to make sure I gave a more detailed description of the assignment, because when we're doing that stop, start, continue, some people are a little bit anxious about the expectations. So I've got 3 reports from last year's class. 2 got A, 1 got A+. And I'm going to go through this with some explanation so you can have some idea of what's expected in the written report. The presentations, I'm going to leave that a little bit open because I want you to use your own imagination and also maybe talk to some other people to get some ideas how to be dynamic and engaging in that. Plus the presentation tips page is quite detailed enough as is. So let's look at some of these things, Justin. Here's the one on the record shop, e-marketing solutions. This one here is on the Australian theme bar restaurant, and this is sort of the Four Amigos restaurant. It seems to be that restaurants was the popular thing that year because that allowed people to bring in food and get people all liquored up. Quantity. Everybody seems to be interested in how many pages. There is no minimum or maximum. But when I was looking at the table of contents, which always a good thing to have, because when I read the table of contents, I quite easily see things like search engine optimization, QR codes, Twitter updates, Yelp profile, blogger account, come out to more than 40 pages. It gives me some idea of very quickly, right up front, what are the range of the topics that they discussed. This group here started with a nice little explanation of who did what, not just one sentence, but several sentences with a picture, which was kind of nice. Then they got into their table of contents. Their table of contents ended up around 35 pages. So it seemed to be in the high 30s. This group here again starts off with their description of who in the group did what. And also notice the quality of paper and the printing and the binding is quite nice. Their table of contents was a little bit more brief. Ended up in the sort of the mid-30s. So, lots of pictures in here. Words tell, pictures sell. The reason why I like the pictures is it shows them on site having a learning experience, because part of the way I mark this is I say to myself, in the process, did they actually do a solution which captured all the things I taught them? But did they have a learning experience? Did they learn something useful and interesting by going out and talking to real people? And this clearly demonstrates that because there's pictures of them here on site doing the different things. There's a picture of them on the TTC where they made their YouTube video. And also the use of color and good explanations. They did a GOPS diagram for their goal and objectives. They did a little SWOT analysis. They talked about industry associations, the Canadian Restaurant Food Services Industry Association. I didn't tell them to do that. Some little charts in here. And they're also footnoted. Some market research. They talked about the 6 environments. A little bit too brief, but still it was good. Then they talked about their business model, some e-business components. They talked about a mock offline website. So you don't actually have to make a working website. You can just talk about it. They talked about some things like geotagging, online communities. They made a Facebook fan page, a real working Facebook page. They got many hits onto it. And they did some screen captures to show the type of contents. They made a Twitter account. So I didn't talk about Twitter in class, but they realized that that's all part of sort of the social media construct. They also did some YouTube channel, and also they did some metrics here talking about how many people visited their video and made comments on it. They talked about some barriers, some technical challenges, and their conclusions, and some screenshots of some of the menu selections and some of the pages. This is the record shop, and their theme is sort of a vinyl record. So they talked about making a WordPress blog. The one thing I liked about this one is they mentioned creating a WordPress blog and talking about attending all the meetings and everybody contributing to all their sort of different ideas. So they had the confidence that all the group members had a learning experience as they went throughout this. Okay, now the introduction. I mentioned this in class and very few people remembered it. You start off with a scenario. They put the words in red, which customized it and made it different so that I could know what are the things that they did different than the standard case study. Again, just to repeat, what I'm explaining is I give you this introduction. You can customize and add on to it. It's important to show that to me up front so I know what you actually ended up doing. Then they talked about their problems, which could have gone into a little bit more detail, but still it was good. The different environments, the considerations and some of the benefits, limitations, and then they talked about a SWOT analysis. I could have used a diagram here, but the words were okay. They had a goal, some objectives to achieve, some plans to achieve those goals. Talked about the promotional mix. They talked about Facebook, WordPress, YouTube channel, an online community. They didn't make an online community, but they had a little bit of a blog talking about that. Talked about some viral marketing privacy issues. Viral marketing could have gone into a little bit more detail, but they had their own example. Measuring marketing effectiveness. And they talked about some future considerations. They talked about GPS and RFID and their conclusions. Now, in their appendix, they had some Facebook analytics because they made their Facebook page. And they talked about the friends of fans, and they talked about their likes, and they talked about a number of things which showed that they really knew about this as a topic. And they also had some examples of their YouTube and some playback locations and where people were looking at their videos, which I thought was quite interesting. For those of you that don't get your video made enough in advance, you can't really do this, which is why I wanted you to get into this quite early. Okay, the Four Amigos. This is the only group that got A+. They were just totally off the chain. Very, very entertaining in their presentation. They did all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. They talked about the company background. They had extensive meeting with people in this sort of area. They talked about the competitive environment in some degree of detail, some marketing research. So they used some information about dining out in general and put the context of the solution in that. Talked about a business model, some components of the website. They also talked about geotagging and explained that in the context of the geographic environment. They made their fan book page on Facebook. And they also talked about Facebook in general, so to put it in some kind of a context, and also some metrics. They did a Twitter account. They talked about customer lifetime value and customer relationship management. They talked about some barriers to the e-business solution, some technical challenges, and they talked about customers' resistance to change and their conclusions. The conclusions could have been a little bit longer, and there's some screenshots of some of their things. So that's all through. I talked about the RU, right? The Australian one. So you can zoom back on me. So basically, that's an example of what the written report is. I've got several examples of me talking about the physicality reports, like having a cover page, having a binding so that you can open it flat, which makes it easier rather than using a staple, and using some good quality paper so the colors could show up in your charts and diagrams. Yeah, so I hope that that's helpful.